All right, hello everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the World Map Podcast. This is episode 3, coming to you live Sunday, May 24th, 2015. I'm one of your hosts, Josh, and joining me as always this week is my colleague, Clark.
Good day to you guys, or girls, or other.
The girls and the others, yes. Definitely those. So this week, obviously a holiday weekend, but still wanted to make sure we get a show out to our lovely audience. We're seeing some reviews and subscriptions rolling in on iTunes and Stitcher, as well as some traffic to the show notes post with the audio file on the website. So thanks to everyone who's been listening, watching the YouTube stream live, or giving us reviews. And I think we'll go ahead and move straight into what we've been playing this week. I know we've both had a busy week leading into this holiday weekend, and the two of us available this holiday weekend. But again, we wanted to come in and talk a little bit about what we've been playing. But I think both of us have been drawn back to games that we have played previously and talked about a little bit on the show, including Super Smash Brothers. How's that going for you?
It's going good. A little bit more of that classic Nintendo combination of excellent gameplay and infuriating madness. I finally have gotten every challenge that does not involve beating it on level 9 with characters, and that's where the infuriating madness comes from, because there's a challenge that involves beating it on level 9 without, which level 9, by the way, is the hardest difficulty, and if you ever played any of the previous Smash Bros. Games, the hardest difficulty is already, it's one of the hardest, actually it is the hardest, and it's even harder in this game. And the problem is something that's kind of cool for multiplayer sucks for single player is the fact that there are 8-player battles now, and when you're trying to beat something in when you're trying to beat a stage in Super Smash Brothers with random items that can kill you in one hit and final smashes and all kinds of other stuff, and there are 8 players on there, and you're trying not to die, that's a lot of that is not based on your skill, but there's a lot of luck involved in that. And,
sure, yeah. I remember my Smash Brothers strategy sometimes in matches with lots of characters was to find a good spot on the map to hide until everyone else's damage was up quite a bit.
Yeah, that doesn't really work when there's 8 players and 6 of them are going after you. I mean, you know, a lot of the Super Smash Brothers, you know, smashers or whatever they like to call them, the hardcore players, the really hardcore ones who are like, oh, that's so easy, you just got to do this or that. It's like, well, you know, a lot of people are normal players. You know, I have a job, actually, that I have to spend time on, so I can't spend 40 hours a week doing that. But something I found that is kind of working for me is using Marth and just spamming the counter. But even still, it seems like the computer's at that difficulty they know. It's like, oh, he's going to press the counter buttons. Let's wait until after that and then immediately get him during his I don't know what they're called, timeout frames or whatever.
Mm-hmm, sure, like kind of after the animation happens.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I've kind of took a dive back into Far Cry 4 a little bit this week. I've mentioned it before on the show, and that while Far Cry 3 was one of my favorite games of all time, probably, and certainly in that series, and I even loved Blood Dragon as well quite a bit, the sort of pseudo expansion to that, wasn't too high on Far Cry 4. I'm starting to actually enjoy it a little more now that I'm about 30% completion in the game. I've put about 14 hours into it, so that gives you an idea of just how much there is to do in that game. I think part of the issue is that Far Cry lets you do really anything that you want to do. And one of the problems with that, and I guess no one really likes a linear game, but I find that I'm just going all over the hillside, hunting animals and fighting people who ambush me or drive by in an enemy convoy, and there are all these like little side quest random event things that happen to distract you from the story of the game, and some of the really great moments that they've crafted and put into the game. It's a shame that they draw your attention away from them. And then I'm the type of person who takes a look at my map and I want to collect every treasure chest that I find laying around. I want to grab every hidden mask that there is to find in the game. I want to craft every item. And so I spend a lot of time doing those things early game and not really getting to the missions. And I think that's why I was kind of down on the game. But now that I'm getting into it, there are two things that I've found pretty awesome. One is the grappling hook mechanic in this game, and some of the things that have come back from Far Cry 3, like the wingsuit and the hang glider, and those sorts of mechanics. Those are fun and not new to the series, but this grappling mechanic actually allows you to throw your grappling hook and either rappel down or climb up the sides of cliffs. But in a lot of cases, it also lets you swing across large openings when you're climbing up mountains, and so you have to get the timing of the grappling right, disconnecting from the rope, and kind of jumping and grabbing onto the edge of a ledge, all in first-person view, which isn't the easiest thing. Keep in mind this is a first-person shooter for the most part, not a platforming game. But I found this one area where I was like climbing up a really, really tall cliff, and I was kind of grappling from one space and then finding the hook-in spot on the next space and climbing my way up and swinging across openings. And it just gave you this really great feeling of accomplishment when you found the right footholds and made your way to the top. And it was kind of almost like a rock climbing simulator game at that point, which is an interesting thing that I've never seen in games. And it was just a lot of fun to do that for a while and navigate your way up a mountain and then to get to the top and find the Sherpa up there. Which brings me to the second thing that I found really cool in the game was I finally got this Sherpa who I met. And, of course, when people go hiking up Mount Everest or whatever, they find a Sherpa to carry some gear and like kind of help them navigate up the trail and up the mountainside. So this guy, obviously Far Cry 4 takes place in the fictional world of Kyrat, which is kind of like the real world Nepal, nestled in the Himalayas there. And I kept seeing these snow-peaked mountains in the distance and wondering, am I ever going to get to go into the Himalayas? And the answer is yes. So the Sherpa kind of acts as almost like a transportation to the Himalayas. Like you talk to him, and then you just like see a load screen, and then you're at the kind of like the top of the Himalaya mountains in this mountain range. So you kind of like see him to go to load a different piece of the world that you can't access from the map, even though it's technically an open world game. And there was some really cool stuff up there. Because there's really heavy snow, the enemies can't see you as well, so you're able to do a lot more stealth gameplay. You do have to wear an oxygen mask because you're up so high, so you're constantly trying to kill enemies and steal their oxygen masks to stay alive. There are snow wolves up there chasing you. There's snowmobiles to find to go between objectives on. There's more grappling up there. So I'm having a lot of fun with Far Cry 4, what I got to play of it this week. Totally recommend that. The other thing that came out recently, though, was the Destiny House of Wolves expansion. I know you're a big Destiny player, Destiny fan. Have you had a chance to dive into House of Wolves?
Yeah, I had a chance to dive in that for a bit. I haven't tried the Trials of Osiris yet which, for those of you who don't know, it's the new Crucible mode where basically you have to actually pay or get an item in order to enter, and then you can get cool gear from it by collecting wins, but if you die or if you lose the match a certain amount of times, then you're locked out of that for at least that week or that trial period. And it's very interesting because it adds a whole new dynamic in that you don't actually respawn on your own. You must be respawned, and so you have to go in with a really good team, and which it's interesting because it actually does not have matchmaking for that mode like it does for just about for every other Crucible mode, which I know some people were upset about because, well, what if I can't find a team? Well, do you really want to go in a mode with stakes that high with people you don't know that can't work as a team? So that's really cool. In terms of the story, I'm not going to talk about the content of the story or whether it is good because I want to be positive and say that it actually is a story this time. And there's an actual beginning and an end and something in the middle with dialogue that references things that actually has something to do with what you're seeing on the screen rather than having to go look at cards online that you collect from killing things that have nothing to do with the story. Grimoire cards, kids.
I got so many Grimoire cards, and I never actually read any of them. I had downloaded the app, and I was like, oh, all this stuff is give me something to read.
I mean, quite frankly, I think those Grimoire cards would be better if they sent you actual cards and they turned it into almost like trading cards or something. Because that's really that. It's just as pointless as that. But the other thing was, with this expansion and the last expansion and all of the upgrades that they've made and all of the things they've changed due to presumably feedback from the community, it actually feels like the game, like a whole game that I originally planned on buying when I first bought Destiny. So only nearly a year and 2 expansions later do I actually have the complete experience.
Well, and then they're not free expansions, right?
No, they're not. They're not free expansions, but it's.
So a year later, 2 expansions and another $40.
but it's a complete experience now. A lot of the issues that people had before have been fixed. For example, you can get you need Ascendant or Radiant shards in order to upgrade gear. Armor, and then for weapons you need energy, but that stuff you receive randomly, and often you'll get one or the other, but you need more of the one that you don't get. And so now there's actually a way you can transfer it from one to another so that you can actually upgrade what you want. Something that happened with the last expansion was when it introduced the Crota's End raid, or the Crota raid, basically. It made all of the raid gear from the Vault of Glass raid obsolete, because that was pretty much capped at level 30. And even more infuriatingly, the basic gear that you can get and buy in the stores had a higher level cap than the Vault of Glass gear. And so there was kind of no point to going through all the hard work, and a lot of players felt screwed. And also there was the whole, in my opinion, lack of customizability of your character, because only certain gear can go up to the highest level, but you couldn't make your character look the way it wanted. With the new system, every piece of legendary and exotic gear can be leveled up or upgraded to the maximum strength or maximum light level via these very rare items that you can get through some of the new modes that were introduced. And so that's great, because then the raids are still relevant. You can get good gear from it because it'll upgrade to something useful, and you can still keep the perks from that. And so all of those together have now made the game something that is more than just the half game that we have all been forcing ourselves to enjoy for the past few months.
I mean, that's a great way of putting it. Speaking of forcing myself to enjoy things, I played Heroes of the Storm some more this week, and so everybody who's listening knows we can't get through a week without Alex or I bringing up Heroes of the Storm. But I wanted to say something a little bit differently about it, not so much about how the game itself is playing and things like that this week. I will say, it's a really fun game. It is a MOBA, even though it's more accessible than most of them, and it's not my favorite all-time game or even my favorite Blizzard game or anything like that. But hey, the beta is now open. The game launches very soon, and if you have even a halfway decent PC, there's no reason not to give it a try. So I'd recommend everybody go in and give it a try. It certainly is a lot of fun. It's just not something I'm going to sink tons and tons and tons of hours into, but I do enjoy logging in and playing a couple matches a week still. And there was one of the free-to-play characters this week was the Lost Vikings, which everyone knows. Heroes of the Storm combines characters from Diablo, Warcraft, and StarCraft, which are sort of known as Blizzard's three big flagship IPs. And everyone kind of forgets about the Lost Vikings from back in their console days. We all played some Lost Viking game, and they're actually a playable character. All three of them as one character is a playable character in Heroes of the Storm, and it's just so interesting, and it just sheds such a light on how good Blizzard is. I mean, we talked about Destiny taking a year to get up to speed where it's actually playable. We'll talk in a little bit about how many problems The Witcher 3 is having. And it just seems like so many games come out broken, and yet Blizzard puts out a game in beta that's better than most of the games that come out and are supposed to be finished nowadays. And the Lost Vikings really shed light on that for me, because I'm like, okay, how is this going to work? Are they just going to be three characters grouped into one, and I'm just going to control this sort of clump of characters? No, every single Viking has its own unique set of attacks and abilities. So one kind of rushes enemies with a shield and can stun them, and he's sort of the tank of the three. One has like a fast attack with his daggers, and the other one is really weak and squishy but stays back and has a ranged slingshot attack. So you can combine all three of them to get maximum firepower, or if one of them starts getting low on health, you can actually split him from the group, or you can move the ranged guy back a little bit so that he's not getting hit and dying quickly. And so you really have to start thinking about how you're playing the game, because you're controlling three characters with three unique sets of skills at once. And it just gets really interesting. My ranged Viking got really low on health, so I put him back inside the base, and I was still able to play with these other two and wait for a chance to heal the other guy when the healing cooldown was over. And I didn't actually have to die and wait to respawn any that entire match. And I actually found that I was able to win some matches really, really easily with the Vikings. And I got into some longer matches this week. I think Heroes of the Storm tends to be 15, 20-minute matches, but I'm starting to level up to the point where I'm seeing more skilled teams and getting paired with more skilled players. And I was actually in some 35, 40-minute matches this week that went down to the wire and ended up lucky enough to win those. But it just really speaks to the fact that Blizzard can come out with this MOBA with all these like 20, 30 different characters, and every single one has they're not just different flavors of the same skills and abilities. Every character has like interesting different skills, and yet somehow the game is balanced. That's like skill development work.
Wow. Yeah, that was actually going to be my question, is how balanced is it with a character that's that unique, or characters that's that unique?
I find the game to be extremely well balanced. When they release a new character, sometimes it can seem like they need to do a little tweaking, and they do it very quickly. But yeah, like you said, it's Blizzard. I mean, StarCraft 2 had some issues, some things they had to nerf and buff at the beginning, but man, it doesn't take them long to get a game with probably thousands of different variables to be balanced. And it's just amazing to me that they're able to do that, and every studio out there should be taking a page from Blizzard's book. Whatever they're doing right.
Actually, I have another question about the game and the beta. I know Blizzard is usually one of the few game companies that is very good at supporting people who play on Mac computers and on Apple devices without needing to run a virtual machine or dual boot. I want to say Heart of the Swarm, but anyway, does HOTS support Mac, or does the beta, or do you know if the full game when it comes out will?
I don't know. I'm looking up right now to see if Heroes of the Storm supports Mac. I know Blizzard has done a really great job of supporting Mac, like you said before. There is a technical forum on Blizzard's website for Mac, so I'm going to go out on a limb here and say apparently they support Mac. There's a 9/10/2014 support forum, but the topic is also locked and no one has commented on it. So that's a good question. But it looks like if there's not a Mac version, that there very well may be in the future. I can't imagine that there's not, or that there would not be, just given what you said. I only recently switched from Mac back to PC after several years, and I had StarCraft and everything on my Mac. So it looks like the answer is yes.
Awesome.
Cool. All right. So I think it's time then for us to move on to talk about what we're excited about this week in the segment we call I'm So Excited. And one thing we mentioned was that it is Memorial Day weekend. We're recording here. Number one thing I'm excited about, hot dogs. How do you feel?
Um, my question is, how can you not be excited about hot dogs? That's practically a given on any day.
Yeah. I mean, you raise a
Yeah.
good point there.
I mean,
You know,
wings and buns, there's nothing better.
well, yeah, especially I think you put a little chili on there, maybe even a little cheese. Maybe some onions, give it a little bit of extra flavor there.
Hmm.
Especially if you're grilling them, you get those nice like grill marks on them. Bite into them, kind of juicy. They've got that skin to them. It's kind of great to break through. I think the graphics are top notch, and the biting and swallowing mechanics are done pretty well. I would give
Yeah.
hot dogs an 8 out of 10.
But here's a question I have for you though. Now there are hot dog purists out there who get offended by the thought of ketchup on a hot dog, and what's your opinion on that?
Well, okay, so here's the thing. I do not get offended. However, I don't eat ketchup on my hot dogs because I just don't really I don't do condiments so much. And I really only
Really?
I'll eat ketchup once in a while on like a peanut oil French fry or something to break the salty a little bit. But typically when I make a hot dog, I either want one of two kinds, right? I want coney cheese dog with chili and cheese, or I go with chili, coleslaw, lots of pepper on top of the coleslaw, some diced red onions. So I don't know, what's your hot dog composition?
Um, well, actually, for me, the best hot dog doesn't use the typical hot dog, but it uses like Italian sausage or something in there, something like that. I don't know why. I think that's awesome. It's something maybe I picked up in Korea where they a lot of times if you buy a hot dog on the street, it'll have some other kind of sausage than the typical mystery hot dog in mystery animal byproduct combination.
Right.
Um, so it was instead a different other animal mystery combination. And on top of that, of course, I agree with you. The onions definitely. I actually like peppers on it as well. Peppers and hot sauce, and I kind of like spicy hot dogs, which not the norm. And I will put ketchup on them, whether you like it or not, people.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well said.
Yeah.
So another thing I'm excited about a little bit this week is, well, it's actually kind of bittersweet. So my car died.
Oh, that
So,
sucks.
so I had to shed a tear this week for my Toyota 4Runner that I've had the last 9 years and put 140,000 miles on. Um,
I must say one
but
thing real quick. Even though that died, someone else has it, but your Buick is still running strong.
my original 1993 Buick Regal, I still see it all the time when I go back to my hometown. It's alive and well, man. That thing is a tank, and definitely took that thing on some adventures. Um, but I'm excited about the new car that I bought yesterday, which is the 2015 Nissan Rogue. I'm excited to finally drive something that gets more than 16 miles per gallon.
Wow.
So
Well,
yeah, and if anyone out there is in the market for a vehicle, I gotta give Nissan some credit. I've test driven and did a lot of research, and for the price point and fuel efficiency and safety, reliability, and all that, they do pretty well. But man, no other car that I've sat inside of has technology. And I love technology, and man, they load some technology into those things. Bluetooth apps. There's Facebook in my freaking car, man. It's insane. Like try not to get sold on the bells and whistles, and but when everything else is kind of good, and then there's that technology too, man, it's nice. I'm a fan, so I'm excited about that this week. I know you tend to kind of bike most places living in New York City there.
yeah, well, I'll take the subway around. I refuse to drive here. There are people that, say it's like, oh, how do you live without a car? I'm like, I live without a car because I don't feel like paying like more money for a parking space than I pay for my apartment. Um, Yeah, but biking here has its dangers too. So what I'm excited about is when someone just calls me a nerd or throws a soda at me instead of kind of trying to run me off the road. So that's pretty cool.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So I think there was something else that you were excited about last week, but now not excited about.
So I think everyone already knows it's about Nintendo because it was something that I was excited about and is no longer excited about.
No way, that happens every time Nintendo does anything, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still excited, but it's for very different. It's okay. I'll just explain it. We talked about the Nintendo World Championships 2015. I was excited about that. They had a really sweet trailer for it, a reveal trailer, hit all the nostalgia buttons, even kind of made a little bit of fun of the Virtual Boy. It was the best thing ever, and I was thinking, this is awesome. The last time I competed in a Nintendo competition, it was, throughout the country, lots of locations to compete, many finalists, and it was like a multi-day event. And so I was just waiting for the details about this competition. Come to find out, the finals, or not the finals, sorry, the regional competition is only at 8 locations in the country. Only
I saw
8.
that. I saw that. It's kind of weird.
At Best Buy. And
which makes it even more weird. Like, who's been in a Best Buy in the last 5 years?
I don't know. I mean, I'm wearing a Geek Squad T-shirt, but
but you got that in college, like 10 plus years ago.
Exactly. I was wearing it because I thought it was retro at this point. But anyway,
somewhere
so first off, I guess I'm astonished that it. Yeah, I'm astonished that Best Buy exists. So that's really cool. It's almost like Jurassic Park here. But
everything, life finds a way, and it comes back around, and they do another version.
I know. It's as long as they didn't use frog DNA for that one. Anyway,
it's Dino DNA.
Indeed. But not only is it just 8 locations, it's only going to be 1 finalist per location. They don't have different age categories, at least from what I was able to find, like they did for previous competitions, or like they still have for their Pokemon competitions every year. And so what I originally was thinking was, this is going to be some new, they're bringing back some big kind of grand competition. Sure, it's great for marketing and stuff, but it really hits a lot of those nostalgia buttons and showcases their great games. And it's maybe something that they can do, multiple years like they used to. They had the Nintendo World Championship, and they had the Campus Challenge I think it was 91. There was also a 1994 thing as well. But based on this, now I'm seeing that it's only kind of a last-minute ploy to me looks like it's almost like a last-minute ploy to drum up some E3 publicity. It's like, we rented this big area. We're just going to have our online video, which those are awesome, by the way. And it's like, I guess we have to do something here. Let's kind of make a competition. And it's all half-baked, too. They don't have, custom games they're playing off. For the trials or.
So I think I saw it's going to be the NES remix games, and on 3DS or something.
Yeah, the 3DS version, no less. First off, if you're having this competition that you want the world to see, why have it on a handheld screen? During the it's like showcase.
Because I heard capture from those things is really easy.
Yeah, well. I mean, the Wii U is the product that's struggling. It does have some great games, and 2, you don't want to show off NES Remix. First off, the people who play that and like that, they're the ones that are already, devoted and want to play.
The other problem I have with that is, have you seen the Adam Sandler movie Pixels that's coming out, the trailer for that?
I make it a habit not to watch Adam Sandler movies.
Yeah. No one said they were going to watch Adam Sandler. He's about as relevant as Best Buy at this point. But there was a trailer before Avengers for this new movie Pixels coming out, and it's an Adam Sandler comedy. I use the word comedy lightly there, but it's all about like video games invading the real world or something because these aliens like got some message and that's how they think they should communicate to us. I don't know. It's kind of half baked as well. But the problem I have is it's like about Pac-Man and Donkey Kong and people who watch this movie and like see this trailer. There are still these people who we're in our 30s now, but there are these people 40s, 50s, a little older than us, who still think of video games as Pac-Man and Donkey Kong and Super Mario Brothers on the NES. And so a movie like Pixels like kind of perpetuates that video games haven't evolved any. And I have the same problem with Nintendo using the NES Remix. They're going to have this world stage at E3, and they're using these like old classic games, and so people watching that are gonna be like, oh, that's still just playing Mario Brothers. Like that's all video games are. They miss the fact that there are like these giant worlds and great narratives and amazing graphics and things like we see in the Mass Effect series and some things like that, and like what we're seeing in some great indie games that are kind of out there. We talked about Never Alone and like the documentary style. And here's Nintendo like, hey, you guys want to play that game that we had at the last World Championship?
Yeah, which, quite frankly, it's not good. Well, there are going to be people our age competing because I'm still going to try. But, this is presumably they're wanting, a new audience, a new people who aren't buying their things yet to be excited about this and playing this rather than just relying on the old nostalgia. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love old games. I love retro. I'm a big retro gamer. I still have an original NES. I, have like hundreds of games for it. The Super NES is still my favorite system of all. The Super I said, right? Super NES is my favorite system of all time.
As it should be.
Exactly. And the thing is a lot of people think Nintendo is rehashing their old games, which they're actually not. They're reusing their same characters for new experiences that build upon or play off of the experiences from their old games, which a lot of times you don't get that nowadays, and so it's kind of refreshing. But they're not showcasing that, at least not in the regional championships. I don't know what they're going to do, at E3, whenever. Maybe they'll show off some new games. It's like, ooh, let's play mystery game number 4 or something. But I can't picture it being like The Wizard, where they announced Mario 3 for the first time. So
what if they do? what if they do like, announce something and they're like, here's a brand new game you never played? That'd be really cool.
That would be pretty cool, but they wouldn't. Well, I guess they would. I guess do it with Best Buy, but even I don't like GameStop, but even GameStop would have made more sense than Best Buy.
Well, they're both about as financially healthy, I think, right now. So.
Yeah, but people still go to GameStop.
Right.
There's about as many of them as there are Starbucks.
I'm gonna make a bold prediction. You want to hear my bold prediction? Okay. Remember to hold me to this after E3. At the Nintendo E3 World Championship 2015, the final game that they make contestants compete in will be a new game that they unveil. It will be a Metroid game, and it will be a multiplayer first-person shooter competitive battle mode.
Oh, that sounds pretty awesome. It's almost like Splatoon. It probably won't have voice chat, but they'll be on the same stage together, so that won't matter. But all right, I will hold you to that. We will see, good sir.
We will see. All right, so why don't we call in the news motorcycle? So, The Witcher 3 is out. I'm guessing, I don't know if you care about that game at all. I know we're both RPG fans, but I played Witcher 2 because it got like all this hype. I had never even heard of The Witcher, the first one. I don't know how I missed that, but the second one came out and got like all this hype and really good critical reviews. So I bought it for my Xbox 360, got like 2 hours into it, and encountered a game-breaking bug. And I was like, WTF, okay. So I kind of swore off The Witcher. Witcher 3 comes out. Everybody is really high on it at first. And then in the news, we're now seeing that it's corrupting saves on Xbox One. They had to patched the PC version already because there were all these issues with NPCs and stamina regeneration. Apparently, the PS4 has font and frame rate issues. People are experiencing infinite loading screens. The Gwent card game within the mini game within inside Witcher 3 is crashing stuff. Like, I feel like the media gives CD Projekt Red a pass and still talks up The Witcher, but these games are like so broken. I can't make myself care about them.
I mean, well, from what you just described to me about all those glitches, that could be any, Ubisoft recent game or just about anything anymore,
Sure.
aside
Yeah.
from something produced by Blizzard maybe, or a couple other companies out there, Bethesda, I guess. So maybe they're not maybe they're giving it a pass because they're just so used to it now. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, that's how it's supposed to be. The patch will come months later, and we'll charge for it.
I
So.
feel like we're in this era of gaming. When we were kids, you would go to the midnight release and like line up and get the game at midnight and then go home and play it like all into the wee hours of the morning. And it was this really cool like launch day
Yeah.
experience. And
Fun fact, I bought Halo 2 like that before I had an Xbox, and I had to find some random person who had an Xbox so that we could play.
nice. Well, I'm sure they were happy to let you since you had Halo 2 on launch day.
Indeed.
Yeah, and it felt like that was kind of dying out, and we were getting into this place where you like download and preload the game onto your console, and then it unlocks at midnight, and we were going to have that experience, but we kind of like skipped that and went to this age where like launch day doesn't really matter, and at this point you just want to wait until you hear someone report that the game has had some patches and it's been fixed. It's like it's not exciting to get a game on launch day anymore. It's like I've been playing Marvel Heroes 2015, which got horrible reviews at release, and then I heard on a podcast that they patched it, they fixed it, they put 2015 on it, which wasn't on the game's title at first, and they've like fixed it and relaunched it this year. And it's an amazingly great, fun game. I don't know what it was like before. Apparently, it was horrible and broken. And it's like, is that where we're at now in gaming? We just have to wait until we hear games finished.
Yeah, well, I mean, see, this probably not completely true, but this is how I feel. I feel like instead of paying testers for a longer period of time, it's like, oh, let's just release it to other people and they'll pay us for it because we'll give them pre-order content.
Yeah.
So it's I mean, we're kind of paying to test all these games, and then they'll fix them later and charge us for the privilege, in my opinion.
No, you're right. It's infuriating, though.
Yeah. Yeah. But I'm still gonna pre-order the game because what am I gonna do without like my Flaming Hot Cheetos branded something or another costume?
Right. No, it isn't. It's sad to say, but if there's some cool cosmetic thing for my character, I'm gonna be kind of wanting it. So
Yeah, exactly. Well, the fun. Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to say one thing. The funny thing is I never use those things, but I want it anyway because maybe a brother or a friend of mine might have it, and it's like, oh, well, I have that too, So I mean,
right,
kind of keeping up with the Joneses, I guess.
Yeah, so Sony also announced something coming to E3 this year, or I guess not to E3, but away from E3. Last year, Sony did this thing called the PlayStation E3 Experience, where they streamed their live show to theaters around North America, and you could go to one of your local theaters and actually watch their E3 press conference and see some of the games get unveiled, and then they put a little bit of custom content in there at the end. I think Jeff Keighley is going to be the host of some of that this year. So that's going to happen June 15th. And this week, May 27th, the free tickets go on sale at 9 a.m. You have to go on Sony's website and try to claim them. I think I'm unfortunately going to be in a client meeting, but I still want to I really want to try to nab those. I'm sure they'll, in the DC metro area, I'm sure we'll have at least one theater that's going to have that, and I think I want to go. So hopefully I can get tickets for that and then be able to report back on the podcast what happens there. Are you going to try to do that?
Living here, I have come to learn that if people are thinking about getting tickets for something, I'm probably already too late because the line is already formed and it's already miles long.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm not going to go to that, but I am hoping that they'll do something else they did last year, which was release an app for the PS4 where you can experience some of the stuff or look at the
Yeah,
videos as well, because that was pretty interesting. So it helped people who couldn't go to the theaters also take part in the experience.
sure. So another piece of news this week was that the producer of the Mass Effect series, Casey Hudson, pretty big name in gaming, has gone to join Microsoft to work exclusively on HoloLens content. That's interesting.
That that sound. I would like to see what he would produce for the HoloLens.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about VR before on the show, and I think that we were all a little bit cautiously optimistic on it. So we'll have to wait and see. You know, Mass Effect, whenever that gets, one of my favorite series of all time. If you take into account all three of them, I really, really like Mass Effect 2. But obviously the series didn't end on a great note or have quite the realization of Casey Hudson's vision that we thought it might. So it's kind of a 50-50 scenario, Microsoft nabbing that name, because a lot of people remember him as being Mass Effect, which is both good and bad.
Yeah, actually, I honestly never knew what the big deal was about people hating on that ending. I guess maybe because I play too many retro games. To me, a good ending is, congratulations, you did a good job. Game over.
Right. For once, your princess is not in another castle.
Indeed.
Here's some credits.
Yeah.
So one other piece of news that I thought was interesting, we know Bethesda's having this big E3 press conference, and we talked before, I think they're going to announce Fallout 4, and actually I really, really hope they announce Fallout 4. But then they release a teaser trailer this week for Doom.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Doom, really?
I mean, they bring everything back, right?
Yeah, I guess I can understand. Okay, Doom's a pretty big IP. That name is well known. I can see them wanting to use it again and dive back into that universe. The teaser they released was basically some little skull creature monster with a skeleton. I don't know. I mean, it was a couple of seconds long. It really didn't show us anything about what the new Doom's going to look like. I feel like they probably could have just released a screenshot and been just as well off. But I don't know. Are you excited about playing Doom again? Were you ever really a fan of it?
No, I was always a Quake or Unreal Tournament kind of person. I thought Quake and Unreal Tournament did the multiplayer aspects better than Doom. Well, Quake was made by the same people as Doom. And then in terms of single-player content, I always thought Wolfenstein was better. So I was never really that big of a Doom fan. But, I guess it depends on what they do with it,
When I think of Doom, I just think of okay, I'm gonna be in a first-person shooter sort of world. I think about dark concrete corridors and monsters are gonna pop out every once in a while that I have to shoot, and I gotta stick a key card in something, and I'm just gonna keep doing that forever. I don't think of anything that aligns with what I know as modern gaming when I think about Doom. So I don't know if they'll be able to innovate and still keep it true to its roots or not.
I don't know. Will they innovate or will they be doomed?
Stay tuned to find out.
Yes.
All right, so let's talk a little bit then about non-gaming for a bit in the segment we call We Have Hobbies. So you've been watching a little Netflix this week, I understand.
Yes, indeed. I was watching The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, I believe it's called. I really only paid attention to the first part, Unbreakable, and half paid attention to the subtitle. But I thought it was kind of interesting because it's what? People living in a bunker? I come from a place where people are always paranoid about things and want to live in bunkers. This might be fun. And it's kind of a interesting story about these girls, well, one girl in particular who is, kind of kidnapped and trapped in a bunker for 15 years of her life, from when she was a child, and then kind of moves to New York right after that and tries to live in, in a modern day city with modern technology, knowing nothing more than maybe what was out in the early 90s. And it's actually pretty funny, just some of the humor that comes from her only knowing life in a little bunker. And one part I thought was really funny was her reaction to her bedroom in her apartment, which she thought was huge, and it's a New York apartment and is clearly not huge, as anybody who is not from here would agree with. And so I thought that was very interesting. I did find a few issues with it, though, and just in terms of, I guess, characterizations of certain people, and some of the jokes seemed kind of, I don't know, like childish in a way, playing on certain stereotypes and such. But overall, it wasn't too bad. And there are actually other things, I'm not going to spoil it, that kind of break certain kinds of typical stereotypes that you think of in terms of what happens with people in movies.
Sure.
That's very vague, but that's because I don't want to give any spoilers, because it's fairly new, and it's a Netflix series, and I support that, and so it's like, go watch it yourselves.
Sure, yeah. I heard actually some really good things about it just from various sources on the internet and things. Obviously, I watched the whole Daredevil series recently on Netflix. Pretty big fan of the first 2 seasons of House of Cards. And I liked Bloodline a lot. So Unbreakable, and I've watched some Orange is the New Black. Really, Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt's like the one kind of big Netflix series getting some buzz that I haven't watched yet. And I think one of the reasons that I sort of was turned off is I got this impression that it was going to be a little like The Devil Wears Prada or something, which, not a horrible movie, but not exactly something I want to watch a whole TV series of. Is that a wrong perception to have?
Yeah, it's not really like that at all. I also saw that movie as well. My brother gives me flack for it, because he thinks I loved it or something. Which,
I mean, Anna Hathaway.
Not a bad movie. Exactly, right? Who doesn't want to watch her, whether you're a guy or a girl? It's awesome. But no, it's not like that at all. It's more like a story about a person who is living in a world she didn't even know existed, and the shenanigans that come therefrom.
I like it.
Exactly, and it's not humor about making fun of, here's the poorly dressed person and we're so rich, but it's like, let's make fun of the person who doesn't know anything, and let's make fun of rich people too, which is always fun because they have enough money to be able to handle it.
There you go. Yeah, so the thing I was going to talk about this week, I'm a big fan. I may have mentioned before on the show of audiobooks. Obviously, in DC, we do dare to drive around, but that does result in sitting in a lot of traffic from time to time. So I listen to a lot of things on Audible, and one of the things I listened to recently was actually the book that they gave out for free back around the holidays, which they tend to do every year to subscribers. And that was The Snow Queen by Hans Christian Andersen. You may recognize that as the book that the movie Frozen is based upon. However, the story is quite different. I would, go back and say that Frozen is inspired by The Snow Queen more than I would say that it's an adaptation of it, actually. And The Snow Queen...
Like Disney made it.
Well, of course.
Surely they're faithful to their source material.
Right. Yeah, tell that to Rudyard Kipling. It's really interesting. Like a lot of the fairy tales from back then, it's much darker and mature than what we know as fairy tales today, especially kind of the Disney-fied versions of those stories. And there are just some really neat things in there, some different characters who aren't in that movie, and it's actually worth a listen. It's got some fun parts. The narrator is a little dry for that audiobook, I think. She was actually named the best narrator of last year by Audible, but I've heard better, honestly. And I'll give you an example of how it's a little more morose than what you would find in a Disney book. So the girl in the story is going around looking for her brother who's missing, and she comes upon these flowers, and she asks the flowers if she's seen her brother, she's basically worried that he might be dead. And the flowers say, well, no, we go underground, and if there were any dead people under there, we know who they are. Your brother's not dead because we haven't seen him there underground with the dead people. So there's just like these little references like that, these little things that aren't obviously going to show up in a Disney film that just have this sort of whimsical but yet a little bit dark side to them that I enjoyed about the book.
That sounds really cool.
Yeah, so it's worth looking at. So let's move on then and give a little bit of our advice of the day. My advice of the day, I think in every show leading up to this, and I think most of ours has been video game tip related, but I was actually just looking at my 401k and noticing that I have a piece of financial advice to give. I should say that I am in no way, shape, or form an accountant or investment banker or anyone who does much more financially, professionally, other than manage some budgets here and there. But anybody can look at a balance sheet and see what's performing well when you have a portfolio of accounts, obviously. And emerging markets are doing very well. I don't know what the markets are that are emerging, but
They're coming from the ocean like
they're coming from somewhere. They're emerging from somewhere. I don't know if this is like some like magic space technology, or maybe like some sort of thing where we bottled spiders and like turned them into cool like kinetic energy perpetual motion machines. I don't freaking know. But all I know is all of the items in my 401k associated with emerging markets performing quite well right now. So if you think that that's worth going and putting more of your money into in your investment mix, maybe give it a look. Give it a look, just see. Don't take my word for it.
Right.
Any advice from you?
Actually, I guess. Well, I guess I'll just talk about the same thing you were talking about too regarding the emerging markets and I guess investments in general. Yeah, emerging markets are doing really well right now. I also noticed that in my investment accounts as well. But the one thing, if you are going to put some, shuffle some things around so that you're putting more in emerging markets, just remember that though some things are doing well now, you can't really predict how well they'll do later. And so if you're just, don't put everything in there, obviously, and also you got to keep track of what you're doing because you want to pay attention. And if you're a little bit more risk averse and just kind of want to have just general steady growth, I would say you can do that. Or actually you'd also want to make sure you have enough put into your bonds or bond funds as well as in domestic markets, and try to kind of diversify over a broad spectrum of really the entire economy. That way when some things are doing good, like emerging markets, that's great, but if they start doing bad, you'll still have yourself protected because something else will be doing good. Like usually when stocks are doing bad, bonds are doing great, and vice versa. So it's always good to kind of hedge your bets like that, particularly if it's in a 401k. Unless you're like 55 or something, if you're around our age, you don't plan on retiring anytime soon. And well, you want to because it'd be more fun, but the realities of life say you can't. And so playing it safe is also an option if you're really risk averse or you only look at your accounts like maybe once a year or so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good advice. Definitely want to diversify, and then if you are someone who looks often and wants to kind of take that more micro approach to managing and checking in on things, maybe find a couple good waves to ride, and when you notice things trending certain ways, then ride the other waves, but make sure that you got some risk built in by diversification.
But see, that's also kind of hard too, because when something's doing well, you have to bet a lot of other people are noticing that it's doing well too, and so how's that going to affect the prices, and do you want to buy something when it starts doing well versus do you want to do it when it's not doing well so that you get a cheaper price? I mean, there are all those different factors, and I'm not an economist or someone like that as well, but it's always good to diversify, I would say.
Yeah, so that's your financial advice of the week, coming from an attorney and a digital strategist. So take
We
whatever we
both
said
have
with a
to
grain
go.
of salt.
Indeed.
Excellent, excellent. All right, well, I think that means it's
All right.
about time for us to wrap up the
Hopefully we
show.
don't get sued. But
Yeah, well, we put the disclaimer on there, right? So,
indeed,
uh,
indeed.
before we get sued, we should get the hell out of here. So,
Exactly.
if you want to know more about the show, I can tell you there is a standalone website that's going to be coming soon. Hopefully I'll have more information about that. But for now, you can check out the show notes and the archived audio downloads via posts on my website, joshuadelung.com. Again, a new website coming soon. This live Google Hangouts on Air video feed will be archived to my YouTube channel. You can just probably search for the World Map Podcast Episode 3. You'll find that on YouTube. You can help us promote the show and make it better. We do want your feedback. So go to iTunes. Even if you have some negative feedback for us, give us a 5-star review anyway and tell us what it is, because, hey, we'll fix it. We're also on Stitcher now, so if you use Stitcher, you can go there and give us a 5-star review and subscribe. So definitely subscribe to us on iTunes. Give us reviews on there and on Stitcher. Greatly appreciate it. It really doesn't take as long as you think, and it'll really help us out. Tweet and post on social media about the show using the hashtag #TheWorldMap, and certainly feel free to share the link to the show notes post, to our iTunes link, or to the live feed on YouTube. And if you want to catch up with either of us on social media, you can do that on Twitter. I'm at Joshua DeLung, and Clark is at jclunk01. I'm also available on several gaming platforms. Would love to hang out and play with folks online. You can find me on PlayStation Network as Thunder_Hokey. Clark is on there as _Clunkster. On Steam, I'm Thunderhokey, is all one word. And on Battle.net, I'm not Thunderhokey. I am James Sorius. The mighty James Sorius from my original... I think that was like a Warcraft 1 when I came up with that name. Or maybe Diablo. I think the original Diablo had my first Battle.net account. So that's it for us. Again, thanks for watching the show. Tune in next week, and be sure to tell somebody about the show. And until then, we are popping smoke.